This segment of the Chopin podcast is brought to you by the Chopin Foundation of the United States, presenters of the National Chopin Competition in Miami, Florida, January 2025. When Avery Gagliano won first prize at the US National Chopin Competition in Miami, she was on top of the world. It was March 1st, 2020, and a week later, the world turned upside down. Having gained automatic admission to the live rounds of the International Chopin Competition, Avery expected to perform her Chopin programs in Warsaw later that year, programs that included the first and third Ballades. Instead, she and everybody else entered lockdown, and the 2020 Warsaw competition was postponed until October 2021. I had the good fortune to meet Avery on a video call recently, where I captured her reaction to passages from her live Ballade performances from both Miami and Warsaw. So how exactly did her interpretations evolve in that year and a half between competitions while quarantined with Chopin?
Honestly, it was a really tough time, I would say. I was coming off of the competition and you have all of that momentum. The repertoire is fresh, the iron is hot, and then suddenly everything stopped. And so for me, it was a big struggle to pace myself in terms of allowing the repertoire to breathe a bit since I had so much time, but then also keeping it ready and perhaps developing it further and finding things and new things to bring to the table in Warsaw.
It's interesting you talked about allowing your repertoire to breathe more in that period of time when you were, I guess, practicing and trying to stay sane during COVID, because I went ahead and analyzed your first Ballade. And obviously it's the same pianist, but the differences are what are interesting. The details are interesting, and the timing is interesting. Here are your official timings between Miami and Warsaw. And what do you notice just right off the bat?
Generally, it's like longer, more time, slower everywhere in Warsaw. Obviously, this is not something I intentionally calculated, but I do think in general, as you perform and you gain more experience performing, when you look back on old performances, you realize that there's always usually more room to breathe and for the sound to fill the space.
So in Miami, Avery played the first Ballade in 9 minutes and 4 seconds. And in Warsaw, she played it in 9 minutes and 36 seconds. So almost a 30-second difference. Now, this piece ranges in recordings from, some people go over 10 minutes, take their time, make it very luxurious, and all the way to Mark Homburg's amazing 6 minute and 50-second recording from the 1920s. But the fact that there was such a difference between your own interpretation, maybe we'll start with this second theme, transition and climax, and we'll start with Miami. Any comments on your 18-year-old self?
I don't know, because it's funny, the places we said that Warsaw actually breathed a bit more, but then I felt listening to this recording that at least in the first portion, it could have flowed even more, and then the time could have come later.
Okay, well
So it's
let's
kind of like inverse proportion, but now I'm really curious
yeah,
what
now let's hear
Warsaw was
Warsaw.
like.
What do you think?
Definitely breathed more in the places where I would have said it needed. And then the first part, even though it wasn't necessarily faster, the rubato, it was less fragmented, I feel. It was a longer line, and that's more of the desired effect that I would have gone for.
Anyway, I mean, these are signs of maturity that usually take many years, but obviously COVID aged us all. So I just feel like I'm hearing a wiser person. And so do you remember
Definitely more, yeah.
do you remember
Sorry.
practicing this piece a lot during COVID? Did it help you get through the COVID times?
I wouldn't say it helped me get through the COVID times, but
Yep.
I definitely practice this a lot. I think also the way I practiced started to change around this time, thinking a little bit differently about the sound that I was producing and just pianistically what was possible. So that's a very long process. Of course, it's a process for a lifetime, but certainly something had already started at this point, and you can hear it.
I want to move to the third ballade now. Just talk about your experience with that piece.
So the third Ballade was probably the first major piece by Chopin that I had learned because I remember the first few were some nocturnes and waltzes, and then finally I upgraded to the Ballade, and that was exciting. I was probably 13 when I first learned it, and it's actually one of the pieces I auditioned to Curtis with. And I have a recording of my audition tape for the pre-selection of this ballad. And it's funny because my mom sometimes sends it to me and says, look how good you played when you were 13 or 14. What happened? I think as pianists, we sometimes look back and it's like, wow, you see the innocence of that time where you didn't care and just played freely. And of course, there are problems, and you're a completely different person. You're not maybe thinking about music on the same level of depth that you do now, but there's something so special about that innocence. And in any case, it's a piece that is very dear to my heart and nostalgic for several reasons, and probably the most seasoned piece out of seasoned as in the one that I had sat with the longest out of all of my competition repertoire.
I will say, I think your first ballade is stunning. I hear in your third ballade that you know it even more intimately. I mean, you seem even more comfortable with this piece. Both in
Yeah.
Miami and Warsaw, it wasn't even a difference of before COVID, after COVID, anything like that.
Mhm.
It seems to be yours.
Well, the first Ballade, for example, that was probably one of the newest pieces when I went to Miami. So
Mm.
you can see like one of the oldest and one of the newest.
Mm.
It's really obvious. And I do feel maybe because I did work on it at that age, it's really ingrained in my mind. It's very specific, the details.
We'll start with Warsaw. Here's the third ballade introduction, first theme. Nice left hand. You do something here that you didn't do in Miami that I love.
Is it a timing thing or?
It's an articulation and a color thing. Listen right here. You changed color in Miami, but listen to what you do in Warsaw. I know it's subtle, but just the lifting the pedal a
Yeah.
little bit, it's like it creates this effervescent moment when you change to major there. I don't know, there's like little details like this in the Warsaw performance, because otherwise they're very similar, that are like
Hmm.
you're just refining and
In Miami, I hear the intention. Like I know that I'm trying to do it, but it's not coming across 100%. It just needed something to really make it obvious to the listener. And then I got there in Warsaw.
but to be there, I mean, first of all, just look at you. Look at where you are. What was it like seeing all these people to your right staring at you? How did you stay focused? Because must have it sounded so beautiful in the hall. But also that's kind of intimidating, right?
Yeah, that's sometimes the most intimidating is when you step into a nice hall and a nice piano and everything sounds nice, and then you just know, like, man, if something goes wrong, it's like I'm gonna ruin this gorgeous atmosphere. In Warsaw, it was so surreal. I just tried my best to keep my head in the music and in the performance and to not let my thoughts stray or wander to irrelevant places. Um, Even before I stepped on stage, for example, with this third ballade, all I had in my mind is just like kept repeating that opening phrase, like, okay, how do I want this to sound? And what's the timing and the flow and the shape? Just meditating on the piece before I stepped on stage and letting that take control as much as possible.
Was there a part of you telling yourself, don't think about how big of a deal this is? You know, was there some part of yourself just start trying not to remind yourself that you're in Warsaw at the Chopin competition, you're advancing, you're in the second
The
round?
whole time, my whole experience of Warsaw was defined by trying to be delusional and convince myself and gaslight myself into thinking that it wasn't a big deal. And I tried my best when possible to stay away from the hall, stay away from the crowds and the media and all the anything that would remind me of the fact that we were in this highly publicized and televised event.
Mhm.
And that was the name of the game for me.
Can I show you some inner voices that I love? You actually invented one, and which I approve of, but it's not really there. I'm going to show you. Let's see if you. Here we go. You do it in Miami too, and you do it both
I don't think
times.
I'm the only one.
You're not the
I'm
only one,
definitely not
but
the only
okay,
one.
but let's talk about it because whether you're the only one or not, it's technically not there. You go re, mi, fa, and then you do sol, la, which actually is crisscrossing the voices because there's a descending line that goes la, sol,
Yeah.
fa. But you sort of take that G and you make it part of this melody. Was that something you came up with, or that a teacher pointed out to you, or that you just heard in a recording, or it was clearly conscious? You did it every time, and it was just so beautiful how you shaped it.
I definitely nicked this from a recording somewhere. I must have heard it and been inspired. And I definitely also debated whether or not to do it because I know that it's not an official line. And I've also experimented without involving that right hand sole, but it's just written in a way that you have to bring it out and make it a part of it. Otherwise, it sounds unconvincing.
I just have to say, your left hand control really makes your performance of this piece. It's just the whole time you're listening to your left hand, and it just carries the flow. Did you have teachers who pointed it out to you, or do you remember the left hand being important when you learned the piece?
Yes, the left hand was very important. And actually, even in the beginning, that left hand voicing that you pointed out,
Mhm.
I remember for so many years, like I knew that was something that I needed to bring out, but the left hand is always neglected. You know, you have to give it 150% attention for it to really speak and come across to the audience. And I don't think I really figured that out until Warsaw. So left hand was definitely at the forefront of my mind. The third ballade, there's something about it that just, the way it's written, that it just flows. And there's something about that flow and that lull and swing that is so calming and meditative almost. And I think the dancer in me really also likes to lean into that. I feel like it's more compatible or reflective in a way of my personality, especially at that age.
So you were a dancer growing up? You took dance class?
I did. I danced ballet seriously up until I was 14. And the other thing with the third ballade is it's also very vocal. I mean, all of Chopin's music is, but in particular, like even the climax is just so sung and melodious. The first ballade is obviously really dramatic and has such depth and tragedy and angst at times. So the third ballade just feels more suited to my nature.
The fact that you have serious dance training and are an accomplished singer, I think actually speaks volumes about how you play Chopin. I think it's in it. You know, I mean, would you agree that you wouldn't play the piano the way you did without that experience?
Yes, definitely. And it's funny because I've had people come up to me after concerts and the question they ask is, do you dance? Because I think dancing totally changes your relationship to movement and therefore movement at the instrument. That definitely affected my way of playing and also just presenting on stage. And then singing, probably, I just think for myself, I really enjoy singing, and that's a daily part of my practice. There's inevitably going to be a point where I start humming a melody to see how the voice would shape it.
Could you talk a little bit about what Miami meant for you, just in your development and in your career, and just allowing this to be possible, and how meaningful that was to be able to have the chance in Miami to share your gifts and also to win first prize there? I mean, that must have been a big moment in your young, still young, development as a pianist.
Miami was hugely instrumental. I was 18 at the time. I had prepared a lot of Chopin repertoire, and what had helped me was that in the previous years, I was part of the US Chopin Foundation's scholarship program. So I felt like every year I had been working on some Chopin repertoire, and then it all kind of culminated at this time in a very natural way. And for me, it was really exciting because I love Chopin's music, but also I didn't have too much of an expectation, and the idea of this possibility that if this goes well, then I might be able to go to Warsaw, and who knows? I mean, that would be a dream. We had no idea, obviously, that COVID was around the corner, so it really was fate that the competition finished when it did, and then literally a week later, everything shut down. But in any case, in the aftermath, also having the few opportunities trying to navigate COVID to perform as part of the winners tour, that was also really important in just helping me grow as a performer and learning more about myself in the recital setting on stage. And so I think all of that contributed and helped me feel more confident and strong entering Warsaw. And I don't think I would have been able to go cold into Warsaw had I not gone through the whole experience at Miami. So I'm very, very grateful for that experience.
The first round of the International Chopin Competition will be filled with ballades, and it is a pianist's interpretation of one of the four ballades that will give the best early insights into their musicianship to the jury, the audience, and viewers around the world. Although tickets to the 2025 Warsaw competition sold out on October 1st, just minutes after they went on sale, tickets are still available for the US National Chopin Competition in January. And since it follows the same repertoire requirements as Warsaw, you can be in the hall when America's most talented young Chopin players put forward their best ballade in Miami. The top 2 U.S. prize winners will win automatic admission to the main rounds of next year's competition in Warsaw. And since winners of the U.S. National Chopin Competition have regularly advanced to the semifinal and final rounds of the international competition in past decades, this is your chance to see a live, in-person preview of some of next year's top competitors in Warsaw. To purchase tickets and reserve your seats in the hall in Miami this January, follow the link in the podcast show notes or the YouTube description. I will be there in Miami in January, having been invited by the Chopin Foundation to host the live streams of every round of the National Chopin Competition. I'd love to see you there in person, but if you can't make it there, be sure to subscribe to the Chopin Foundation YouTube channel where the performances from all rounds will be broadcast, and enable notifications so that you don't miss a moment from the Miami competition.